Here we are in the First Unitarian Society of Minneapolis, where David Sommer's family have been active for decades. Today, we celebrate David's full and remarkable life. His curiosity, his focus, steered him through 85 rich years, and we are grateful for his presence in our own lives. We are rich in inspiring memories that he leaves us, but we also grieve his death, and those closest to David feel his parting most acutely. Louise Halverson, his wife, Wanda Davies, his sister, and his daughters, Lucia and Linnea. We think of you most today. This large family of cousins, our sharing of stories about David with you, and our continuing check-ins with you in the months ahead, I hope can go some way toward comforting you. We in the human family know that the gift of life has always meant that we will lose those we love. But we know, too, that caring and memory endure. We know that even in the lost land of profound grief, so long as we can help one other creature, or do one thing for community, or one thing for earth, that our lives are not lived in vain. And we have remembering. And remembering will one day bring a smile and confidence and the decision from within to pass on the good that we have received. I begin with a short summary of David's very full life, and you will hear stories from his sister Wanda, from his daughter Lucia, from his cousin Jerome. You will also hear poetry of David's brother Richard Sommer. May these stories and thoughts confirm in you how much of David you keep within you. David was born on the 4th of September in 1938, the second son by just 4 years to Ida Jerome and Henning Sommer. Henning Sommer was a gifted photographer and journalist, but 4 years later, Henning Sommer flitted away with, the stories vary, either a circus girl or a rodeo girl. At this point, the Second War was on, and the Great Depression still ground its heels into the American Midwest. Ida, a social worker, pushed ahead with her care for families even more desperate than her own, while caring for these 2 small boys of hers. Beyond his years, David was fully conscious of the enormous effort and sacrifice that Ida made for her sons. In the memoir David wrote recently, his gratitude and even awe of his mother's energy and sacrifices for her sons comes out fully. Another aspect in this memoir, David has written pages and pages about his friends. There are not only childhood adventures, building explosive rockets with his brother and friends in the backyard, and running away from home, walking all the way to Hudson, Wisconsin, to be sure, after David had left a reassuring note for his mother. There are not just these escapades in the memoir, but pages and pages of appreciative thoughts and biographies of his close friends in childhood, at University High School, and later at the University of Minnesota. These are detailed, realistic, and thoughtful portraits. David valued friends. He was a good writer. He was clear-sighted and honest, and his words are honest, grateful, and generous. David also describes the immense gifts Jack Davies brought into his life. Jack Davies was the new husband, his new father, and his first Christmas with Jack, David records as the happiest Christmas of his boyhood. David had a fine and curious intellect. After the backyard rockets, many explosions, it's frightening to read, and 4 paper routes, he had 4 paper routes. David took up chess and the game of Go, and he played against adults. He did math at the University of Minnesota and then at Harvard for his advanced degrees. He had entered the frontiers of computing. He worked first for Control Data here in Minneapolis, and then among his many other endeavors, he set up the computing system for Northwest Airlines. Eventually, he established his own consulting firm. He met friends who became important to him through his work. And with the young lady who'd caught his eye at the University of Minnesota, Karen Ekval Johnson, he started a family. Together, Karen and David reared Lucia and Linnea. Their divorce, after the girls were fully launched, was a very friendly one. And I must add that just a few years ago, David paid warm tributes to Karen at her memorial service. When David finally retired, tennis became a highlight of his days and travels. Then he met Louise Halverson. This was something new. They discovered they both loved the outdoors, hiking, everything active, and especially tennis. They would willingly travel across the country to watch tennis. They played nearly every day of the week. They bought a house, they gardened, they read lots and lots and lots of books, attended concerts and plays, enjoyed their life in Minneapolis. They were always active. Although the family celebrated their very musical wedding in February of 2003, Louise has reminded me that the two of them would have had 25 years together this January. When David and Louise finally moved from their big house to the Gramercy Co-op, they chose it for the large, wild preserve across the street where they could hike and walk. Both stayed involved with tennis. When David wasn't taking on responsibilities with the Senior Tennis League, he was on 4 working committees at the condo. This is the David you know. Energy, generosity, curiosity, deep appreciation for those he loved. David created a remarkable 85 years among us. I want to invite up Wanda, his sister, who's going to tell us about his tennis career.
As Wendy said, tennis was an important part of David's life and a part that I was fortunate enough to share with him. There were 3 reasons that David loved tennis. First of all, it's fun. It offered him a philosophy for living, which may sound a little odd, I'll explain. And it was a way for him to be of service and make the world a little bit better. I don't think I have to explain why tennis would be fun, even to people who don't play tennis. But a philosophy might be surprising. David attended the tennis and life camps at Gustavus Adolphus College for many years and encouraged me to do the same. While the tennis instruction at the camp is top-notch, David was even more enthused about the life aspect, which encourages a positive attitude, full effort, good sportsmanship, and letting go of all those things that you can't control, both on and off the court. On the court, he was unfailingly positive and honest in applying the tennis code of conduct. Even while David experienced the unfortunate muscle weakness in his last years, he worked with a physical therapist and diligently did his exercises to keep as strong as possible and able to play for a little bit longer. He did not go gentle into that good night. And in his last years, he grieved his inability to play. As to service, David devoted himself to improving the Senior Tennis Players Club. He was a tireless evangelist. At my 50th birthday party, he was so pleased to let me know that I could now join senior tennis. Though at 50, I did not necessarily feel like a senior. I did join, though, and had no regrets. And throughout all of his years playing, he would hand out senior tennis cards to anybody he saw who looked like they were over 50 and had a racket around. He brought the club into the 21st century by creating a website, streamlining the database, serving on the board, and editing the newsletter for so many years. It seems the U.S. Tennis Association was also impressed, as in 2016, they flew him out to California for their national convention to receive their Senior Service Award. He was also a captain for tennis groups and took that responsibility seriously. When somebody wanted to join his group, he would meet them, hit a few balls, and ensure that their level of play was suitable for the group. Anyone who knows David knows he did not suffer fools gladly. So if a player wasn't a good sport, they would get a talking to. And if that didn't change behavior, they would be booted from the group. I'm sure those conversations weren't easy to have, but it made playing in David's group much more fun. Myself and so many others are grateful for all of David's hard work, and we will miss him.
Louise, friend and fellow musician Dana is going to sing for us. Thank you, Martha and Dana.
My home is home.
Linnea, David's daughter, offers us a poem.
This is a poem by my father's brother, Richard. Its title is Autumn. We call it a touch of autumn in the air. What to call it better, I don't know. Maybe summer's fullness being pulled from everywhere. As the planet turns over and I don't, as day by day something is drawn from me that I must doubt will return. Spring and its greening speak to what's new, yet what is leaving me is old and sustaining. And in between, winter gapes, another gap in time. Too many of these indefinite antecedents. Even while I was on my back 2 weeks indoors, the mountain has blazed up red from deep green, and I'm left out of sync again with the general turnover of the planet. But truth is, I'm singing, and however odd the song, I'll sing it as long as I can stand to sing.
Lucia, David's older daughter, is going to share some of her memories of her father.
So I asked my cousin Anna to come up here with me. She's a professionally trained actor, so if I can't get through this, she can. I wrote this letter for my father when he was in his last few days, and Louise read it to him, and she encouraged me to read it here. Dear Dad, I'm so sorry for what you're going through. And hoping it gets better and more peaceful, stat. I know that Louise is doing everything she can, along with the hospice nurses, to get you the proper balms to help ease you into whatever comes next. I just wanted you to know, in case you didn't already, that I couldn't have asked for a better father. Among the most important of many things you taught me are: Number 1, expect little of other people, but much of yourself. That way, you'll almost never be disappointed, and you'll often be pleasantly surprised. I think you learned this as a very young boy whose father abandoned his family during wartime as the country was just easing out of the Great Depression. I treasure your memoir describing, among other things, how when you were only 8 years old, your newly single mother would leave tea on the wood stove for you and older brother Richard to drink before heading to your paper routes, before school, in the dark, in the frigid Minnesota winter, to help support the family. Number 2, embrace stoicism. By example, and through our many hiking and canoe adventures, you taught both Linnea and me that nature is beautiful and sublime, and most of all, indifferent to the whims of humans. And coming to terms with this fact can be tough solace. The counterpart to this, of course, is endeavoring not to feel sorry for oneself, because we recognize our trials are the same as everyone's, and how fortunate we are compared to most. Number 3, pay attention and keep it smooth. You taught me to drive and how not to brake suddenly unless you really need to. Don't tap on that brake pedal while you're driving. And as a friend wrote in a song, quit stomping on the gas like you're killing a rat. Accelerate slowly as you're rounding a curve to maintain a constant speed. I never realized until much later, when my husband Steve pointed it out, what a car guy you actually are. From the yellow Duster sports cars to the eggplant-hued Infiniti and the red Prius, you appreciated quality, whether flashy or workhorse. My first memory is of the 1964 Plymouth Valiant station wagon, white streamlined exterior with red leather interior. I still recall you telling me to quit bouncing around in the back seat, Lucy. This was before seatbelts were mandatory, of course. And the drive-in movies on warm summer nights where the scents of the Minnesota prairies blended with those of popcorn from the concession stand. You told me how Mom made curtains for the back so it could double as a camper, and how on a trip to DC for a peace march in 1965, your best friend, John Sherman, and his girlfriend were with you. You took turns sleeping and drove straight through. To this day, I'm irritated by choppy drivers, just like you are. I think of you whenever I drive, and I enjoy driving as smoothly as possible in all situations, whether a few minutes to the grocery store or through blizzards in upstate New York, commuting, or navigating crazy Florida drivers and semis in downpours on long trips. Of course, this was always about so much more than cars and driving. It's a challenge of mindfulness, of being awake, that keeps one from being bored and from missing what's important. Number 4, you taught me not to be afraid of men, not by telling me this, but through the example you set. Because even though you were an old school dad, no negotiating with one's kids, for God's sake. You never scared me, and I always knew you loved and respected me. As a result, I've never been deferential simply because of gender or put myself below men. This is one of the reasons I'm sure that I've been so fortunate in my relationships and in my nearly 20-year partnership with my great love, Steve. Number 5, don't give up on people. You were always my rock. Even when I really screwed up, you were always there. Sometimes you were sad, and that was the worst, but you never gave up on me. Now, when I say you taught me any of these things, I don't mean to imply that I learned quickly or that I wasn't a jerk about it sometimes. I was the difficult daughter, unlike my sweet sister Linnea. But now these lessons are as much a part of me as my DNA. I meant to ask you when I was there, but I didn't think you were leaving quite so soon, whether you're afraid. I hope not, because you also taught me that one of the insights of the scientific method is the humble recognition that we don't know everything yet. I'd like to think that the theories of experimental physics about parallel or multiple realities might be true, and that in another reality, I could be your daughter again, in another just slightly different world. And then again and again and again, each permutation different, but just as good as this one has been. In the end, the most profound lesson you taught me is that love is all that matters. And I love you with all my heart. Ever your daughter, Lucy.
David's first cousin, Jerome Lewis, couldn't be here, but he has sent his message, and his sister Jeannie is going to read it.
Good afternoon. I would like to share my recollections of David, especially from our earliest formative years in childhood. In many ways, David's story is my story. David, who was 9 months my senior, and I entered the world during a chaotic, transitive time, not just in the lives of our families, but the world. It was a time of chaos, fear, and uncertainty. David and I had the good fortune to be protected by the love of Ida, Eva, Murray, Russell, Jack, Richard, Henning, Aunt Bertha, and a host of other family members. Although Henning moved on from the family in time as a skilled photographer, he artfully captured early memories of our lives together through his photographs, for which I'm grateful. During our early years, our families shared a home at 4123 Wentworth Avenue in Minneapolis, a short walk from Nicollet Field. While our house seemed big at the time, today when I drive by, I think of David and our extended family going about our daily life in a one-bathroom house. David and I look back at our young selves as free-range children. We were free to explore the neighborhood, occasionally tussling with local kids and setting off fireworks and such. We undertook excursions to Nicollet Field. We went ice skating, and we took the streetcar on Nicollet Avenue to downtown Minneapolis, all by ourselves. We enjoyed going to minor league Minneapolis Miners, I guess that was a new name for that, again, all by ourselves. My recollection of those years are that life in our family was rich with mutual support among aunts, uncles, grandparents, cousins, boarders, and housekeepers, all cycling in and out of our lives, all supporting, all helping each other as needs arose. This was a period that shaped our lives. The world was tumultuous, but 4123 Wentworth was our refuge. In time, toward the end of World War II, my family moved across town while David's family remained at Wentworth. Even so, David and I kept in touch. As YMCA camp counselors in training, David and I worked together at Camp Itihapu. I was having trouble pronouncing this morning. For an entire summer. We earned $10 a week, and we were happy for it. We washed dishes, pots and pans, we taught swimming, and we served as mentors in the cabins with the campers. A highlight of those days for me was taking a canoe trip to the wilderness that David organized. As a teenager, I couldn't read my school books or drive my Buick. At school, David excelled in academics, especially mathematics. David was the outstanding math major at the U, a big deal. In that capacity, David was there for me. David's help, without question, was one of the reasons I was able to make it through college. He was patient and reassuring. Although he made me do mathematical somersaults, look at that, I was able to pass my math course and move forward. I cannot thank him enough. We shared other endeavors during the 50s and 60s at the Unitarian Society, which is where we are now, and the University of Minnesota. We came together at the Channing Club and the Tri-U Club. There we explored ideas, contemplated Nietzsche, discussed big ideas, and drank coffee. We both developed dear and lasting friends during that period. In time, my family moved to Lake Owasso, and later followed by David's family, who settled across the lake. As life expanded and families grew, we drifted in separate ways. I moved out east, and David went to grad school at Harvard, and eventually moved back to Minnesota. As adults, we got together whenever we could at family celebrations or holidays in Minnesota or in Delaware with David, Karn, Lucia, and Linnea. Linda and I spent happy times with the Sommers family. Always when David and I reconnected, we happily recalled the many good memories we shared in our formative years. The last time I saw David, David was my big brother. I looked up to him. His memoir of his early life is mine as well. The last time I saw David was the summer of 2023, and I felt gratitude to Louise for the care that she provided for David during this challenge. I will always be grateful for the meaningful times that David and I shared together. David will be remembered with love.
We are going to close with a poem by David's brother Richard. Jonathan will read it. But I want to invite you, reiterating the invitation of the family, will you join us for refreshments downstairs after this service? We'd be glad to share stories about David's life with you and anything you can remember. Jonathan?
Like all of you, I'm going to miss David a great deal. And part of that is because of who he was. He was, and he shared many of these qualities with my father, Richard. A deep sense of justice and kindness, a generosity of spirit, an inquisitiveness, and you know, he was a man who never stopped wanting to learn and knowing that he knew very little and wanted to explore. Those are qualities that I've tried to develop in myself, and my dad died in 2012, and ever since then, David has kind of been my link to my father, and also a reminder because they shared so many things in common. And so I think what I'm going to try to do here is conjure up David in my mind. This is how we keep him around. I don't know where he is right now, but for me, he's inside me like my father is. I can hear that Midwestern twang in his voice. You probably, if you're from here, you probably have no idea what I'm talking about. But I'm a Canadian, so, and I can hear the pace, the rhythm of the way he spoke, and I can picture the way his eyes would look at you in a conversation. And he lives inside us, and he will. And this is why I think it's important for us to convey some of this to some of my son, his nephew and niece who are here, to conjure them up so that they can carry David in their hearts as well. And in the spirit of that, I'm going to read this poem that was written by my father, and I'll try my best to do an impression of my father and the way he would read a poem, because I don't know that any of my son or his cousins had heard my father read. And so this is how we continue things. The poem is called The Cardinals. The cardinals are there to hear these days, not see. The other day, a red flash take off and escape into green, far off in the brush and gone. But then there she was, 10 feet away, muted mate to the male's absent fire, glowing softly in a veil of leaves. Then springing away, the branch left empty and quivering. Somewhere her beak, her one brilliance, parts the air, but not here. All that's left is a torn bit of memory, a red blur in the mind. Oh yes, and the dream the other night of cardinals whistling over my mother's sister's grave. I don't know which is true. I don't know why my beautiful aunt disappeared. I don't know why any of us do, but we do. Thank you.